Welcome back to Bunny Banter, first and only podcast for everything Killer Bunnies. I'm your host Matt, here with co-host Mikey.
Hello.
Mikey is back! Yay! He wasn't
Yay.
here last episode. We had Scott instead. And as a guest today, we have Joe.
Hello.
All right, what are we talking about today, Mikey?
We're talking about a bunch of stuff from Cake Batter.
More Cake Batter cards. This is the third episode of Cake Batter content. 3 out of 4. We're almost there. And we're almost to the release of Cake Batter. It was delayed. COVID delays and all that. I believe the current estimated date is either in May or June. So we're just a month and a half away, potentially. That's exciting. So we have a lot of cards to look at today because there's still a lot of cards to cover. All right, so let's get right into it. You know, I don't know why we're having Joe back since he still doesn't believe Maple sparkles. So, but
Once there's sufficient evidence for me to believe Maple sparkles, I'll believe it.
but thankfully we're talking about Cake Batter today and not Maple sparkles. So that debate will not be relevant here. Joe will not be invited for the Maple sparkle episode until he repents for that. We'll see. All right, first topic for today. We're getting more Underground support. Is that exciting? I don't know if that's exciting.
Yay.
Yay? Question mark? Okay, we are getting one more oyster cracker. Sure, but you know that is. Wait, how many oyster crackers did we have before? 3, 4? Was it 3 or 4? I think it was 3.
Yes.
Yes. Now we have 4, I think. I'm gonna have to check back up on that. I've forgotten. Undergrounds are that irrelevant. And we're also getting 2 more Undergrounds, which brings us to 12, and that one I'm sure of. What do you think about this, Joe?
I think, look at the Undergrounds. We have confirmation that blue bunnies and yellow bunnies make green bunnies.
I hadn't noticed that. That's amazing. Well done, Jonathan.
Yeah. That's some good art there. So yeah, shout out to Jonathan.
What do you think, Mikey?
Well, like I said before, yay. I mean, so when Undergrounds were first coming out in London and we hadn't gotten London yet, it was exciting. It's like, ooh, a new thing. This is so cool. This is so cool. And then we got them and we're like, this is kind of useless. and part of it was because there were so few Underground stations and so many cards that they just became irrelevant. So, getting more Undergrounds could be arguably a good thing, but also we're getting more Undergrounds and we're getting more other cards as well. So like if we had a deck that was literally just Undergrounds, that would make them a little more relevant and it would maybe be better. So, it's nice we're getting more, so you have a better chance, but it's just not enough.
There you go. I kind of agree. I was discussing this on the Discord the other day about what makes a fundamental mechanic relevant. Every deck has its fundamental mechanic. The green deck has Zodiacs. The red deck has red bunnies and barriers and that sort of thing. The orange deck has the extra P cards and the specialty bunnies. All of them have those fundamental mechanics that make this deck unique, and the deck is somewhat focused around that. Orange deck has pawns. That's the one I was looking for. For some reason, I couldn't find it. All right. Yeah, pawns were a big deal. So what I've found after going through all of those and looking at all the fundamental mechanics, I realized the mechanics that feel really good either are strong within themselves, like ranks, or have strong cards supporting them, like Zodiacs. Zodiacs are relevant not because they are strong within themselves, because they only have a 1 in 24 chance of actually doing anything for each of them, but because they have relevant cards supporting them, such as ORP not being able to target a player with the save Zodiac, having something as simple as community carrots that rewards you with the carrots if you have a save Zodiac. Things as simple as that, where it's just like, hey, having this thing does something and it's relevant for me. Something as rare but as simple as a Zodiac triplet, that's helpful. So I found that with all the fundamental mechanics, you either need the mechanic itself to be good, like ranks, or the supporting cards to be good, like zodiacs. Sometimes you have both, like
Mhm.
pawns. Pawns are very good, and the supporting cards are also quite strong. Medals are very good, the supporting cards are also quite strong. Or perhaps more accurately, the cards that counter them are quite strong in many cases. But you don't need to have both. With ranks, the supporting cards are very irrelevant. There are so many irrelevant rank cards in Onyx, but the ranks themselves are strong enough to support it. With senators are kind of in the same line as Undergrounds, where the mechanic itself tends not to matter, and the supporting cards tend not to matter. Except Undergrounds are even more so, where the mechanic itself, out of the 100+ games I've played since the London expansion, and that's not an exaggeration, there are 100+ games. it, precisely 3 of those times it was relevant.
Yeah.
So it's relevant in 3% of games, which, saying it like that doesn't sound terrible.
You know, at least with, you brought up senators, at least if you get one senator, it can be useful.
Right.
Whereas if you just get one Bunderground, if only one person has a Bunderground, it's useless.
Right. There's extra steps involved in comparison,
Yeah.
which there should be balance-wise, because senators are a weaker effect than stealing a
Mhm.
bunny. Killing a bunny off of a misfortune is a weaker effect than stealing a bunny, especially if you're stealing something like the holographic bunny, which it was the holographic bunny, specifically a ranked holographic bunny in those 3% of games in terms of my data. Which begs the question, will Bundergrounds be relevant at all post Cake Batter? Because the red holographic bunny can be stolen with the red Cathexis bunny just as easily. In fact, extremely more easily, because you can buy back the Cathexis bunny. So all of a sudden, the 3% of cases that I had no longer exist, and now it's probably more like a half of a percent, maybe. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I have not really. I'm going to be honest. I've not really played with Undergrounds. I think we had one game with the London booster, and I don't even think we drew a Underground. So I guess I would add that to your list of games that didn't really affect that much. But wasn't there going to be more in the Undergrounds? Am I remembering correctly? Like this is like the red line, and there was going to be other lines added.
Yes, there will be other lines added, and I believe there are plans to put 1 or 2 other lines in the condiment deck at the end of the generation. You know how chocolate was kind of the end of generation 1. There's going to be a very large condiment deck where kind of all the filler cards just get all thrown into one. So we'll get probably a couple lines of undergrounds and all that support.
So maybe once all those are out, we'll be seeing the Undergrounds be more relevant.
I could see it, just statistically. Any other further thoughts, Mikey, before we move on?
No, yeah. I agree with what you said. It's until we get that condiments deck booster. Yeah, Undergrounds. They were kind of. They're not even one-hit wonders, really. There was a lot of hype, and then it was like those phones that would just constantly burst into flames. Everybody's so excited for this new phone, and then you get it and it just explodes. So
I like the analogy.
yeah, not they. There was a lot of hype, and then they turned out to be kind of so.
All right. Well, at least we know what to look for in terms of whether fundamental mechanic will be relevant. Which we talked about those last episode on Bunny Banter with the Cathexis bunnies and the pastries. And I believe those mathematically will be more relevant at the very least. I think they'll actually be pretty good. But we can at the very least say they'll be better than Undergrounds. All right, let's move on. We have a lot of cards to talk about today, so we're just going to move pretty quickly through some of these. We have a couple irrelevant ones to talk about, perhaps not even talk about. But I'm just going to show them here. We have a decadruple horseshoe. I almost said decadruple clover. We already have that one. We have the horseshoe version of it now. 10 horseshoes to be expected. That's coming at some time. Here it is. All right. We have some new terrible misfortunes. There's 2 of them in this deck. Notably, and Joe is the one that knows this in our group. These aren't casting. We've been getting casting misfortunes a lot recently, and these notably aren't. So I thought that was an interesting thing to point out. The Terrible Misfortunes are always fun card text, as always. You know, you got dinosaurs with tether brawl, you got a bunny in a safari getting crushed by elephants, so lots of fun. But let's move on to we got lots of cards to talk about, so let's move on to the more unique cards that we have coming in the Cake Batter set. Our first one today is Dice Man. It's a non-aggressive run card. Maybe used by a player for 1 round of play who temporarily controls all of the game dice. If an opponent needs dice for a card or consequence, then he must ask the permission of the player. So essentially what this does is you play it, and then if anyone else wants to play cards that require dice that round, they have to have your permission, otherwise they cannot play those cards. What do you think, Mikey?
Well, I'm a little confused because the way I read the instructions was that if you have a card played on you that requires dice, you have to ask permission to use the dice versus lay the card.
I can see how it could be read that way, but that becomes paradoxical. It is, right. It's the player who plays the card who needs the permission, not the person targeted.
Yeah, because I was like, that doesn't make much sense, because then what happens if the person denies you the right to use the dice?
Right.
But okay, so in your interpretation, which is more than likely more correct than mine, because it's the only one that makes sense. I don't. This would be really useful if you. Well, I was going to say it'd be useful if you knew what was coming. Like if you had. I can't remember what the card is, where everybody flips over their
selective disclosure.
Yes. Okay. So if you had that and you saw what was coming, if it was a very special, you'd be able to anticipate that coming. But I don't know, because it wouldn't really work with selective disclosure just because of the way runs work and turning. It just seems like you're really taking a shot in the dark there. I mean, I suppose if you had been playing aggressive and so everybody's going to be attacking you, this would be somewhat useful, because then it would give you a reprieve. Or if somebody is being aggressive towards you. But I don't know. It just seems like you would have to play this at a very random time, and it runs the risk of being useless.
Okay. What do you think, Joe?
I think this is a super interesting card. First thing I noticed is it's not aggressive. So, you know, if I really need a bunny, I can hold other players' dice hostage and demand a bunny. So that'd be kind of fun. The one thing that I'm wondering, there's gosh, I cannot remember the card now, but there are cards, right, where you have to roll higher than a certain number to survive, right?
Right.
So if I have that played on me and I am not allowed to roll the die, would that count as not rolling higher than the number needed, or would that card just go away?
The opponent who plays the cards, let's presume it was a weapon, would require permission to play the card. You don't require permission to roll the dice.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yep.
That makes more sense.
Now, where that gets confusing and where I'm not quite sure on anything on this one more is what happens with roaming reds because they've already been played. Are they just not affected by this? Probably, but it's a weird situation.
What about a pawn reroll? So someone plays a weapon, I roll poorly, then do I need a secondary permission to reroll the die?
I wouldn't think so. That's something to consider.
I think that's a really interesting card, but I definitely want to clarify some of those points.
Bunny bits.
Right, yes, the bunny bits will be
Yeah,
helpful,
yeah.
I'm sure. Yes, card or consequence. Card obviously refers to the dice roll themselves, but consequence also card or consequence usually tends to go right together. Um, I'm trying to think if there's a scenario where the pawn reroll would be considered in that, but it seems like I don't feel like that feels intentional. I'm gonna have to think about that one more. Yeah, this is an interesting card.
I feel like we might need a Jeff clarification.
We might. We'll see what the bits have, and then we'll figure it out. um, this is an interesting one. I was trying to figure out what to compare it to, and then I found a comparison that I kind of liked. I like comparing this to Baker Street, which I compare to Text Time. So Text Time is the card that makes it so that all of your opponents have to race to uh, text time to your phone, and the player who does it last loses a turn. Well, if you turn your phone off, you're not going to receive any of the text, so therefore everyone loses a turn. So therefore, text time is essentially playing Baker Street on all of your opponents if you want to use it that way. I kind of view Diceman like that, where you're sort of skipping their turns, but only if their turns were a specific thing. So if their turn was going to be a weapon, you can choose to skip that because they won't be able to play it. Or if their turn was going to be playing a save special like Supply Surprise, they're not going to be able to do that because they can't play the card. I kind of like viewing Dice Man like that, except it's limited and therefore it's non-aggressive to balance it because Text Time is of course aggressive. So it's a non-aggressive pseudo global Baker Street in some ways, which is a good card, right? Probably. I don't know. We'll see if it's good. You could also compare it to a scenario like Locked In, where it really depends on how well you can read what your opponent has set down to determine the strength of this card.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, that comparison exists as well. But I think in the majority of cases, I'm just going to use this as kind of like a mass Baker Street. And if my opponent gets through with something like a Choose a Carrot, so be it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one. Next one we have is Fasten Zip Fasten, a non-aggressive run card. We have a few of those this time around. Maybe used once to force all players to vote on how they close their pants. Fasten zip or zip fasten. All players in the majority may choose a carrot from any Kabbalah's market. What do you think, Joe?
I only ever wear yoga pants, so yeah, I don't know.
So how will you answer this one? I don't know if you're allowed to abstain because it forces you.
I think I fasten zip.
All right.
I'm not going to take off my pants right now and double check, but I think that's how we do it.
Mikey, how do you fasten your pants?
You know how when somebody will ask you a question about how you do something and you just, for the life of you, can't remember because it's habit? That's the way it is.
know!
I have no idea. I have to go test it out afterwards. But, this is interesting. I mean, what if you don't wear pants?
I hope you're wearing pants while we're playing. But yes.
Or, like, here's something. Okay, you have some people who, because of religious reasons, women will only wear dresses. Then it's discriminatory, Jeff.
Have they ever worn pants in their life?
Well, we have some independent fundamental Baptists that live behind us, and the girls wear snow pants. but they don't wear pants any other time.
If they did wear pants, how would they close them?
I
That's the
suppose
question.
you gotta do it like a heads up 7-Up kind of thing where you gotta put your head down so nobody can see what you're voting for. So because this has the potential, honestly, you you if you're gonna form an alliance, if you have if one person's playing super aggressively, you know, you wait until that person has voted and then everybody else vote the exact opposite of them. And then you all get to choose a carrot and that person doesn't. So I mean there's some benefits to that. I wonder how a passive player would play. Anyway, yeah, there are ways to. I mean, honestly, nobody else knows how you fasten your pants except for you. So there are. This is an interesting card because you could just be rather dishonest just um, to gain things. I mean, you just look around and see, okay, the majority of people do fasten zip, so I'm going to raise my hand for fasten zip.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let's assume that the vote is secret, because I believe it will be.
Okay.
It's an interesting card. You know, as far as Killer Bunnies goes, I tend not to be a fan as much of wacky cards like Blanky Madison or anything like that, where there's some weird physical element or question how you fasten your pants or anything weird like that. But this one, I'm a fan of cards that choose carrots because that speeds up the game. This one chooses quite a few potentially. You know, imagine if you're playing an 8-player game, and let's just say, for the sake of the card, that instead of actually answering the question and following the theme of the card, we just all agree to give the same answer. Just be like,
Yeah.
hey, does everyone want to agree to gain a carrot? Sure, everyone gets a carrot. I like reading this card like that.
Oh man, and then you do that, and then you secretly wink at 2 other players,
No,
and then you form a
no.
federation to vote the other way.
Yes. If you're playing Tabletop Simulator, start a secret group chat. Be like, "Hey guys, let's vote the other way," and then we can leave out Mikey and Luke. Yes, I can see it. It's so sneaky and so worthless. I can see it. But yes, I like doing this card like that. It's a wacky card, and wacky cards are wacky cards. But this one has a nice benefit to it. More of a benefit than most wacky cards have. So that's a nice change over the norm. All right, let's move on to the next one. This one might not have much to say about it, but we have Fungus Among Us. Now it's an Among Us reference, I'm certain, because these titles were made long before Among Us was popular. But there we go, Fungus Among Us. It's a non-aggressive run card, and it may be used once by a player to reposition all the funky fungus bunny modifier cards under any bunny or bunnies in the bunny circle. So if everyone remembers, the funky fungus are kind of like the anti-clovers, where they increase the weapon level. What do you think, Mikey? Is this one relevant in any way?
Well, you don't often see funky fungus. And if you do, how many funky fungus are there? Is there just one or are there multiple?
There's multiple, but not that many yet.
Okay. So if you do see a funky fungus, I don't think I've ever seen more than one in play. And so I don't know. It it has the potential to be a really good card to play against a super aggressive player because you take all of the funky fungus and you just put it on, one of their bunnies or multiple bunnies, however you want to do that. This would be a good card to use on the what I can't remember the name of those bunnies that you always use to get around.
Breakdown.
Yeah, breakdown bunnies. Yes, that would be a good one to play on the breakdown bunnies. But because you only ever see one funky fungus in play most of the time ever, it's kind of irrelevant. if there were more funky fungus, like if there was many of those as there were clovers in horseshoes, then maybe this would be a good card. But because there aren't a lot of them, it's kind of irrelevant.
Right? And you never know, we might get the full set of 12 fungus
Mm-hmm.
eventually, but we're not there yet. What do you think, Joe?
Um, I think that's exactly right. I think there's going to be some cases where this will be fun to play, and majority of cases, it's just another one of those super specialized cards.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the inherent problem with this card is a bunny with the fungus is not likely to survive long. So it's not likely that the fungus itself will be in the circle long, and therefore it's not likely that there'll be more than one fungus card in play. So I don't know. I'm not saying it with this one. I consider it kind of like in the D tier. I've started rating my cards by tier as I've been playing. This kind of like a D tier. I don't like D tier cards. I love B tier cards and even C tier cards because getting those to be relevant, it's so satisfying being able to combine those together into making some really weird combination of strategies that you've never thought of before is so much fun. But D tier cards, it's like, what on earth do I do with this thing? So many cards from the Onyx expansion are either S tier or D tier. There isn't much in between, and you know which ones are which. You know what I'm talking about if you look through the Onyx expansion. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm not seeing this one. I'm not too excited about it, but every expansion needs their D tier cards. Otherwise, the deck would be relatively imbalanced. All right, but let's move on. Move on to a more interesting one. Another non-aggressive run card. All of them so far that we've talked about are non-aggressive run cards. In fact, all the run cards we talk about today are non-aggressive run cards. Look at that.
Ooh.
Is gerrymandering. It may be used once by a player to move all barriers to new positions in the blind circle or into the discard pile. I think this is a really interesting one. Barriers are a relevant mechanic, usually, especially the neutronium barriers. We can already say this is complete power creep over the European parasites that remove one barrier, or over the relocation card that moves one barrier. This does all of them or discards any of them, and you can get the barriers to the exact state that you wanted at that time. Is that good enough? Because European parasites is a D tier card. What do you think, Joe?
I think this is going to have some fun times. I mean, if I can play this to wrap up the opponents I want to be wrapped up, and then it just drop a ranged weapon on them, that'd be kind of fun. I was kind of confused though when I read the title gerrymandering. In my mind, that's like drawing more borders. So at first I read it, I thought it was going to be taking barriers out of the discard and putting them into play,
That would have
not
been
the other way
interesting.
around. But also, I don't want to have to flip through the entire discard pile. So
Yes. Yes, that would be a mess. Yes, we officially keep barriers in a separate discard pile so that we can find them for gerrymander. No, I'm glad that's not the case, but it would have been interesting. That would have been quite interesting. But barriers aren't in the discard too often. And usually it's the neutronium barrier that's the most relevant, and that one is very rarely in the discard.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Mikey?
I like this. I think that the name is very fitting. I think it's kind of funny. And I don't like barriers. They're like little jar necks sometimes. Um and but so I like the idea of being able to move all of them and not sometimes you get in a game and you have 2 or 3 barriers in there, and then you have to wait until you get a card that allows you to remove one of the barriers or something, move the barrier or something. But this is like, hey, this is awesome. I can get rid of them all if I want to, or you like Joe said, wrap up your opponent and drop some big on them, and then you don't have to worry about yourself being sacrificed. I don't know. This is I think of all the cards we've looked at tonight so far, this is my favorite. This is a good card.
I can see it. I can seriously see this card being a sleeper, really strong card. Uh, I kind of view it like I view close the market in starter set or open the market in starter set, because closing and opening the market in the starter set context is so relevant, and it's actually one of the strongest cards in the set. Unironically, closing and reopening the market at that point in the game with all new players, everyone thinks it's absolutely the worst card, but no, it is very much S tier in that context, because having that control is so huge in the end game. I kind of view gerrymandering in that sort of context, where barriers can be very relevant, just as closing the market can be very relevant. Not so much in full set anymore, but it can be. uh, there's so many cards where if the barriers were in a different states, the card would become so much stronger. So that makes this a very good support card. Any roaming red and the barriers aren't the way you want them, just enclose yourself and move all the barriers so that you're protected, and then throw the roaming red on everyone else if you want to be aggressive, or make a couple people safe if you got a little bit of alliance there, or whatever you want to do. Maybe there's already a roaming red in play, and then it's just like, hey, now I can solve this problem. Maybe you have Shockwave and the barriers aren't in the right spaces. Maybe you have a Breakdown Bunny and the barriers aren't correct. Any of those situations where it's like, hey, this solves a problem. And that means the card is relevant, because barriers are relevant. There we go. We have an example of the fundamental mechanics of barriers, which are relevant, and therefore the supporting card is also relevant if it does something okay. This does something okay, but since barriers are relevant, this card is relevant. At least we think so. We'll find out. I don't know. I'll probably end up drawing it when there's no barriers in play. It's like, well, alright. I guess I'm saving this until the rest of the game, and it's just going to sit in my hand forever. And Chris is going to get scared, thinking it's Path to Perfection, because I'm holding a cake batter card in my hand, and then it's bait! There it is! It's actually stronger in the hand, because if you keep a worthless card in your hand from cake batter, everyone's going to think it's some amazing combo card like Path to Perfection, and they're going to be like, we gotta deal with that right now. Let's throw our Scarlet Letter on him and make him discard his hand. It's like, oh, thanks. I wanted to discard my hand. Now I can actually draw Path to Perfection. So there you go. Any cake batter card is relevant just because you can hold in the hand, and that's always a threat. We'll find out if that's true, but that's something to consider. Maybe Fungus Among Us is actually really good just because it's from cake batter. Alright, one last run card for us today, and then we'll get into a few special cards. Jenny, non-aggressive run card. Rolls the Kinder dice along with 8 other dice. May be used once by a player to roll the dice and to replace any of his remaining 6 cards with the top 10 flavor cards from the draw pile if an 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, and 9 are rolled. So it's kind of like Cool Change, right? A little bit, except a little bit more targeted, because you're specifically looking at the top 10 flavor cards, which is relevant because that includes cake batter, that includes caramel swirl, that includes pumpkin spice. There's a lot of pretty good cards in all of those expansions. Chocolate, Jarnek is in there, Atlas Shrugged is in there. There's a lot of good cards in flavor decks. I've said for a while now, it seems like I like the flavor decks better than the theme decks, because it seems like the flavor decks are more relevant on average. Not to say the theme decks are irrelevant, but on average, I feel like the flavor decks are more so. But that requirement, that's a lot of numbers you have to roll. What do you think about it, Mikey?
Well, first, I like the reference. It's a good song. Yeah. If you are lucky enough to get all of those numbers, this is a great card. It's Not my favorite that we looked at tonight because it's so difficult to get. Now you do get to roll all the dice. Well, pretty much all the dice. And so I don't know. I wonder what the chances are. What statistically are the chances of getting that?
It's a very good question. I might need to calculate that one.
But anyway, yeah, it's a cool card. I think, I'm very particular about the cards that I like, the cards that I don't like. I don't like risks. And I don't like cards that give other people things. And so, but this is a card I'm okay with because there's no risk involved if I play it. And the likelihood that my opponents are going to get anything by playing it is pretty small. So, yeah. I mean, it seems kind of like it's kind of a neutral card in my view. It's not super great because it's so difficult, but it's not bad because you can potentially win something and your opponents potentially can't.
There you go. What do you think, Joe?
So I I have a life pro tip this reminds me of quick. If you ever need to give your phone number for a rewards card, just do your local area code and this phone number, and 9 out of 10 times you can get the reward without giving over your phone number. I do
Nice.
that at a grocery store by me all the time. Anyway, sorry. Back to the card. I'm a little sad it doesn't include the brown die, just because I want a chance to roll that.
Yeah.
What really interests me, though, if I'm reading this correctly, you can replace any of the remaining 6 cards.
Mhm.
That would include your face down run card.
Yes.
So I think that's pretty nice, actually, if you can pull it off.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I'm a fan of this one. When I look at this card, I'm thinking of. I think it's at the pretty exact value level that I really like in a passive neutral context. And this is the passive neutral context that really likes cards like Free Cabbage, for reference. Where it's like, hey, this card gives me value, but the type of value I'm getting is not the type of value that can be retaliated against very easily. Because, I play Free Cabbage. Oh, I need to retaliate against that. Good thing I had maggots. I mean, sure, that happens, but normally, an opponent isn't going to be like, wow, Free Cabbage is too strong of a card. I need to retaliate against you right now because you're such a big threat. No, nobody's going to do that. You play Jenny, it's so unlikely to work that no one's actually going to be concerned. But it gives you so much value. Play this once your hand is utterly worthless. It's the same philosophy as Cool Change, except more targeted, which is better. If you get the dice roll. I don't know. I think I'm going to be happy to draw it, but I don't expect it to work. Which is perfect for my passive neutral context, which I haven't played recently because I haven't been in the right group for it to make sense. But it is viable in pretty much every group. That's 4 or more players. I just haven't been in a 4 or more player group recently, so there you go. But I'm going to be happy to draw this card. I'd put it in like a C or B tier. A tier if it actually gets the dice roll, but it's not going to. Maybe I'll buy the pawns and make it more likely, and I probably will in this expansion. I feel like pawns are going to become more relevant, especially with the release of Almond Crisp next year, or at the end of this year. I could see it. There's a lot of reroll potential, and you might actually be able to statistically get this, but I don't know. Until that point, I'll be happy to draw it. Don't see it working.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to a special card. We have Honey Hash Browns. This is the brown pea card that we've all been waiting for because we're getting the brown pawn in Cake Batter. It is a non-aggressive special card, and it may be used once by a player to feed the bunny. One bunny is fed any amount of cabbage units, water units, radish units, or milk units. So, It is a flexible Danish. You can either use it as a Danish or an eclair. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts, Mikey?
I want to know how potatoes and honey uh, are capable of fulfilling a hunger for cabbage, water, radish, or milk. There's literally no. I mean, honey is kind of a liquid, but it's not like you don't drink honey. I don't. I I wonder what the thought process was behind this particular card and the name and all of that. But anyway, that's not really relevant. What is relevant is this is an awesome card. This is amazing. Because it just sucks when somebody lays a feed the bunny on you and it's radish and milk and you have a Danish and you're like, I could use this. This would be amazing. But you can't because it's the wrong type of food. So you get this. This is wonderful. It does lead me to, it begs the question then, are we going to get a carrot that is holding honey hash browns?
That would be something.
Yeah, because we have the is it Anthony?
Right.
Anthony who has the eclair and Flo has the Danish.
Hmm.
Are we going to get someone with honey hash browns?
We won't in this set, but potentially in the future. Once we get
Yeah.
to Gen 3, 6 years from now. I joke, but you never know. Who even knows if Gen 3 is a thing that will happen eventually?
Yeah.
What do you think, Joe?
Mechanically, it's awesome. I mean, I think this would feel a really, really good place in the game. My only problem is they missed the chance to call this a prune eclair or chocolate Danish.
Oh.
That's what I would have called it.
I,
But
I I suppose, but then how would it? I think then you lose out on the theme of it interacting with the brown pawn.
oh, that's true. And I love honeybees, so I guess I'm okay with it.
There you go. Now the question is, are either of you going to buy the brown pawn if you draw this?
Yeah, I would.
I don't know.
And then I would relentlessly throw feed the bunnies on everyone.
That's a I I don't know if it'd be worth it. If there was a card that gave me the brown pawn,
Mhm.
or if what's the card where there's a card where you can take a pawn.
It's free pawn, but that lets
Yeah,
you pick any two. So
there you
maybe
go.
if you get that late game, it's still
If I
there. You get like some
Yeah,
brown pink.
yeah, if I got free pawn, I would take it. But I don't know if I don't think I'd pay for it.
Hmm. Hmm. I could see it. Um, I kind of envision. I'm trying to picture a large player count of 5 or more players. And in that large player count, if I buy brown pawn, will I actually have feed the bunny cards played on me? And that's the question you need to ask yourself for your own group, for the listeners back at home, is if you have the defense prepared and it's a very efficient defense, are they going to actually attack you or are they going to put it somewhere else? I think a lot of groups would put somewhere else, but there are some groups that follow the philosophy of let's remove the defense before we remove the threat.
Yeah, I do that.
um, which that works too. So it really depends on the group there, on whether or not I would buy brown pawn. But if you think about it, every single feed the bunny card, at least the first one played, costs $6 to fix, and the brown pawn costs 5. It's a terrible analogy because obviously you can get extra food than you need, but
Mhm.
it's fair in certain circumstances where it's just like, hey, do I want to spend my honey hash brown? Do I want to buy food, or do I want to buy brown pawn and get another honey hash brown? I don't know. I can see it.
Mhm.
Again, I'm excited for passive neutral context with cake batter. I'm also excited with passive neutral context for atomic pastries from last episode. But this one as well, where there are certain groups where people have their favorite color pawn. And whose favorite color is going to be brown? Who's going to be mad if I buy the brown pun? But look at it. It gives me so much value.
If your favorite color is brown, it's like those. There's a commercial on the radio, and it's the world's most boring man, and the lady says, "Are you a fan of beige?" And he says, "I find other neutral colors too exciting." Or something. No, yeah, it's yeah, it's oh no, I find other neutral colors too unpredictable. That's what it is. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, whose favorite color is brown?
I mean, it kind of is the perfect color for that sort of strategy because everyone wants the black pawn because it's rolled the most, and the people who want to meme want the pink pawn because it's the most worthless. Brown pawn is the second most worthless, and therefore it is the perfect one for that strategy. And it's not like if two people are playing this strategy, it's not like one is going to be mad at the other if they get it because it's not the type of strategy that gets mad.
Yeah.
There's no counter. It's OP. Sure. All right. Well, that's honey hash browns. I'm excited for it. I think it's a long time coming. There's two of them, by the way. I just showed the second one. That's exciting.
The
All right.
bees.
Speaking of feed the bunny cards, ooh, segue. We have a very special card that I think is pretty high value. We'll see if Mikey and Joe agree. It's called Acid Reflux. It's an aggressive, very special card. Maybe used once by a player to immediately kill a bunny that has just fed. They can be used at any time. So your opponent just spent all of their money and effort to try to feed the bunny, or maybe they used a honey hash brown or a Danish or something like that, and they were like, "I need this bunny to survive, so I'm going to feed it." And all of a sudden, it's like, "Nope, I made you spend your resource, and the bunny still dies." Haha! What do you think, Mikey?
Well, it's an interesting card. I unfortunately have acid reflux, and it's not a fun thing. So I feel for the bunny that is killed killed by this. Um, if I were to get this card, I would be very happy. I think it's a great card, especially if you're the one who plays the feed the bunny, and you know, um, if somebody has a prune Danish or something, and you want or honey hash browns, you put your feed the bunny on there, and they use up their honey hash browns, and you're like, ha! You just wasted your honey hash browns, and now your bunny's dead. I just yeah, I like that a lot. I would hate for this to be played on me. And fortunately, there's only one of them, and there are thousands of cards in the deck. So the likelihood that it gets used is very, very small. But I would love to be able to play this on someone.
From my experience, the likelihood is about 1 hour of every 6 games. Because my group usually plays to about 6 of the deck each game. So there you go. Everyone's group will be different that way. But yes, there's a chance. There's not. You'll see it semi-frequently. Any card you'll see semi-frequently under that context. What do you think, Joe?
I think this gives a nice little buff to feed the bunny cards, and I don't know about you guys. When I've played, it seems like feed the bunny cards aren't always that viable for killing bunnies. They're more of a way to drain money from a person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So adding this on top of that just I think it makes it a little more viable if there's a bunny I want to get rid of.
I can see it. Yeah. For a while now, back when I played quite a bit of Star Set with Tabletop Club, feed the bunny cards, I definitely in that playing so much in that context definitely made me look at feed the bunny cards differently than I previously would have. When you play with a set when you master a specific set, you start looking at cards differently. I didn't look at the close the market in that way until I played in that set for I don't know, 200 games. I didn't look at feed the bunny cards as a resource drainer as opposed to an actual way to kill a bunny. Uh, I completely agree with that. Feed the bunny cards. Usually, I want my opponent to feed the bunny because then they're going to spend their money, which is usually a more valuable resource than the bunny itself, unless it's something like a pink gleeful that's generating money or some other valuable bunny, which they want to feed. So in that context, it's like, okay, you're either going to let the bunny die, or I'm going to kill it. Your choice. And if you let the bunny die, I'll kill the next one. So as long as you have the threat of this card, every feed the bunny card is going to kill a bunny until the point they finally decide to spend the resource, and then you're like, haha, now I kill you. Maybe you. I think I'm going to be keeping this card in my hand so that nobody knows about it, because I don't want people to know that I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
As I say it publicly on Bunny Banter, this is the strategy I'm going to use. But as long as I have this card in my hand, I can look at every single Feed the Bunny card and say, this kills a bunny guaranteed. And that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
How many times can you look at a card and say, this kills a bunny guaranteed? And it's not like I'm wasting acid reflux, because if I'm keeping it in the hand, then I want to cycle it anyway so that I can draw a new card that's probably better. I don't know. I think it's actually really good. I kind of compare it to Feed Now or Die, except I think it compares favorably. So Feed Now or Die is best in the situation where your opponent only has one bunny and you want to make sure that they don't have a bunny for next turn. It's kind of like a guaranteed weapon, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Feed Now or Die is, hey, I can guarantee that this will kill this specific bunny. Acid Reflux is, maybe this bunny was going to die anyways, but if it doesn't, I can choose to kill it. So it makes every Feed the Bunny card a choice, where if it died anyways, well then I don't need to spend my card. But if it didn't, then I have a choice. Was that bunny actually important to kill? Probably not really. That's why I'm really excited about this. I think it's actually unironically one of the stronger cards in the set. And we looked at some pretty spicy ones on episode 1 for Cake Batter with Feckless Finances and Path of Affection, Dice Station Zero, all of those 3. If those are the top 3, this is like number 6. We'll say. I don't know what the other ones in between there are yet, but they're in there somewhere. Maybe you put the Red Cathexis bunny in there. I don't know what else you put in there. The oyster cracker, of course. But I think this is really good. I'm going to be very happy every time I draw this card. There's no way I'm cycling this one. Unlike the other very special we're about to talk about, Prime Time. Prime Time is also an aggressive, very special card. And it may be used once by a player to take all saved prime numbered carrots. That's quite a lot of carrots, right? Yeah, that is quite a lot of carrots from his opponents. Just from his opponents, not the market, so kind of sad. You kind of have to use it late game, so slight restriction there that day. But the bigger restriction can only be played at 3 minutes to midnight, 12:57. So you have to be playing late night Killer Bunnies and hope that you get this card at the right time, and then finally you get to steal some amount of carrots. It might be a large amount if it's late in the game, but if it's early in the game, well, I suppose it wouldn't be early in the game if you're playing at midnight, but maybe something terrible has happened and there's a lot of carrots still in the market. You might not get that many, but I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
I think the real strategy here is if you draw this card at half hour before midnight, or half hour before the time you could play it. That's not midnight. You know what I mean? Go hide in the bathroom for a half hour, then come back and flip it over. Because it's a very special, so you could play it at any time, right? So
right.
I think that's the strategy.
Sure. Just don't time it wrong.
Right.
As you're washing your hands, you're like, oh no, I'm a minute late. I missed it. What do you think, Mikey?
Well, first, I have an issue with the artwork. On the clock, it's 1:03.
Is it?
Yeah.
It is. Oh my, Jeff. Wait. No. Wait. Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Is he just holding it funny?
I think the
No,
hands are backwards.
it's 103.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
How can we tell for sure?
Unless,
I mean, what if he's holding? He could. So he's
excuse
kind of
me,
holding it from the edge.
if the if the image was flipped, it would be 11:57. But the way that the image is now, with the shorthand at 1 and the long hand is about 3 minutes past the
Is
well,
is the shorthand at 1 though?
it is. I'm looking at it. It was pointed directly at 1. Oh,
How do
wait
we
a
know
minute.
that
No,
one's
it's
1?
not. No, it's not.
Yeah,
Oh my
I think you
goodness.
got to turn your head a little bit
I
to make
think
that
so.
one.
Yeah. It's like no, because the 55-minute mark, it looks a little bit longer than the 1. Yeah, it looks like
I can see exactly what you're talking about.
okay. I'm sorry, Jonathan. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to falsely accuse you of doing wrong. Okay, it is 11:57. Okay. So, now that we've gotten through that,
Crisis averted.
it is I don't think this card is very relevant at all. I think that this is going to be one of those cards that it's just like you draw and you're like, oh no, this is I
Well,
can't
well,
do anything with
you don't
this.
say "oh no" because it's a very special, thankfully, not a run card. You can just discard it.
Oh,
Can
awesome.
you just discard this one? Because you
Yes.
can only play it
Play
3 minutes
includes
to midnight.
play includes. Well, that's a fair point. Okay, I see the logic. I completely understand your logic right now, and I'm going to have to think more on that one technically. But the issue is right now with the logic is the different use of the term played.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Uh,
Yeah.
this perhaps the more accurate wording would may be used only at 3 minutes to midnight. But that's a confusing clause that doesn't exist. It's because the played clause exists in different contexts. So I can see the argument, but I'm going to disagree with it, I think. We'll give it a 80-20 split on how sure I am. But yes, I see the logic. But yes, and assuming I'm correct, we're not sad to draw this, but it's just kind of like oh great, another useless very special card like Tube Delay. What do you do with it? You just cycle it. You treat it as a 0 Kabbalah dollar. That's what you're doing. That you drew a 0. Good for you. Why hasn't a 0 been printed, by the way? Can we get a 0 Kabbalah dollar? I think it's time. It'd be hilarious. Yes, I drew a 0. It would have mechanical relevance too for things like Lemon Squeezy. It would mean that you drew one less card than you were supposed to. That'd be amazing. We need that. We have a half. It's time we get a 0, and then let's add the forever Kabbalah. No, stop. We don't.
Forever Kabbalah, though.
Oh, I win the game.
It's like that hack in Sims 4 where you just it's called, you type in motherload and you just get $50,000 and you just keep adding it and adding it.
Yeah, yeah. No, we don't need that. But off topic, I want a 0 Kabbalah dollar now.
What if it was an infinite Kabbalah dollar, but you could only use it to give the dollars to other players?
Just make an alliance with the other player and just be like, hey, do you want infinite money? If you trade me infinite money back, then we can trade back and forth and we can buy all the carrots. It's just like, No! Don't do that. That's not a salvageable design. We're going to throw that one out right now. Or we could have an infinite credit card like the loan shark, but with infinite money. No, that still
Mhm.
wouldn't work. That still wouldn't work because you could play on turn 1 and win. Sorry.
What if you couldn't win if you were in debt?
Loan shark already has a clause that does that, but technically, if all the opponents don't have bunnies, you can get by it. There is the possibility to end the game with loan shark and survive. Because normally all your carrots would go to the player with the oldest opponent. But if you're the one with bunnies, then you're gonna get the carrots right back. So that sort of clause is a weird clause that can't exist. I don't think. Maybe there's a way to salvage that, but I don't know. Off topic. How many of us play games at midnight? Mikey, do you play any late night Killer Bunnies?
Nope.
Joe, do you play any late night Killer Bunnies?
I'm sure I have. Actually, yes. The best Killer Bunny story I have. I used to live next door to my landlord, and one day she comes up to me and says, "Joe, what were you doing last night? At like the middle of the night, I just hear you scream, 'Show me the bunny!'"
Nice.
I actually woke up my landlord. I was so excited to play that
Nice.
guy.
Alright, I can't say that I frequently play at midnight, so that makes 1 out of 3 of us actually able to play this card, potentially. So, I think most groups will end up discarding this one, but, well, most groups will probably save it because they won't read it and then they'll save it so that they can read it later. But most groups that actually know what this does will discard it and draw a new card because we need a dip. This one isn't good enough. Except for the groups that happen to be playing at a specific time, and it's like, oh great, I get to steal a large amount of carrots. That's it's a very strong effect. I'm glad it's limited to that context. All right, we have one more card today. And it's a play immediately. You thought we finished all the play immediately at the start. No, we have one more. Not a terrible misfortune. This is Dr. Shu. Maybe it's once by a player who can form the longest words using the letters of his saved carrots to choose a carrot from any Kabbalah's market. So all of the Kinder carrots and the few that aren't from Kinder, and the carrots that appear in Cake Batter, we officially have the full alphabet now. If you can form the longest word, you get to choose another carrot. The rich get richer, I suppose. The more carrots you have, the more likelihood you'll be able to get a longer word. What do you think, Joe?
I think I don't know how to spell any words that are longer than 3 letters anyway, so I don't think this is going to do me any good. But I think someone will benefit from this.
Are we going to have to get a dictionary out in the middle of play and be like, is that actually a word? Are we playing Scrabble now? We gotta get out the Scrabble dictionary and be like, I challenge that word. What do you think, Mikey?
Yes.
I just looked up what the longest word is without repeating any letters. And this is just a forum, but somebody said subdermatoglyphic.
Well, there you go. That's the dream now.
I think you should get an achievement if you can pull that one off.
I think so. That's one of those Killer Bunnies bucket list items. Mikey, send me that word in the group chat. It's officially on my Killer Bunnies bucket list. I'm going to purposefully be choosing all the lettered carrots just in case Dr. Shu gets drawn. No, I'm not going to do that. There's no way I'm doing that. We choose random carrots in our group because it saves time, and everyone likes saving time. Actually choosing a carrot is way too aggressive because it delays the game. Nobody likes delaying the game. There we go. How many layers is that, Mikey? Let's see. 6, 9, 12. I lost count. Oh no. 16?
I counted 17.
17. I didn't count very carefully, so it's probably 17. There you go. Just get 17 specific carrots, and you can do it.
Yeah, it's 17.
17 is apparently the longest one. What about player? I was about to say, what about players who don't speak English? But since the expansions aren't released in the German and French versions, I don't think that matters. Sad day.
Also uncopyrightable.
Right.
That's another one you can use.
Uncopyrightable. Okay. There you go. We have goals. I'm going to be like Joe and just do a 3-letter word like cat. Which will be cat is actually 3 tier 1 cards: Cleopatra, Athena, and Tom. Amazing.
Well, I don't know if that would work. There, you'd have to use 2Ks.
All right. That was our last card for today. So we have that was exciting. We had some exciting ones in there. And we have one more episode of Cake Better content yet to come. That will be on what I like to call the filler cards. You know, the cards that support the fundamental mechanic. So you know how much we talked about fundamental mechanics this episode. We're going to be looking at the cards that support the atomic pastries. So that should be exciting. Thank you, Joe, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Keeping it interesting as always. And Mike, anything you'd like to say?
I hope everyone's doing well. Like Matt said, I wasn't on last week, so I wasn't able to know that you are hearing my voice. I want to say I wasn't able to see you all, but that doesn't really work. So, but I hope you're all doing well, and Jeff bless.
F less.